My sister has always been manipulative and cruel, yet my parents favored her as their golden child. Ada for showing them her true nature. Lisa, my 18-year-old younger sister, is the real embodiment of evil on earth, in my opinion. I am a 23-year-old woman. I have attempted to persuade my parents to see the truth over the years, but they have never trusted me, until now. For background, I have always had a tense relationship with my parents, mostly because of Lisa. My mother lost a kid due to a miscarriage, which had a profound impact on her, which is why my parents cherish her. A few years later, Lisa was born and was considered their miracle child, a ray of happiness and optimism that eased the anguish of their earlier loss. My parents made her the center of our family's existence by lavishing her with love and care. To be clear, when we were kids, I adored my younger sister. Simply put, I began to gradually realize that Lisa possessed a remarkable gift for manipulation that none of my relatives could match. She was skilled at playing the victim and knew how to make the scenario work in her favor. Our grandparents once gave me an old pocket watch for my birthday. I was overjoyed that it was a family heirloom. Lisa continued asking me to share it with her, obviously jealous. Since it was a present for me, I declined. She attempted to convince our parents, but they were unable to stop her because it came from our grandparents. Knowing that I was afraid of spiders, Lisa put a house spider inside my pillowcase that night. I shrieked as I woke up from my sleep to the terrifying feeling of a spider crawling across my flesh. Lisa looked astonished and sympathetic as my parents hurried in. She exhibited no remorse, and later when we were alone, she confessed with a spooky smile that she had placed the spider there to teach me a lesson. I once invited my classmate Mark over to watch a movie since I was crushing on him. To impress him, I got dressed up. Lisa giggled and purposefully spilled juice over my dress when Mark got there. In an attempt to conceal my shame, I had to change. She then wouldn't leave us alone while the movie was playing and started telling Mark embarrassing anecdotes about me as a kid. Lisa grinned and told Mark he could do a lot better than me just as he was ready to go. Mark hurried out, feeling uneasy the whole time. I have warned my parents about Lisa's antics over the years, but they have consistently written it off as her being impressionable and immature. They believed that I was the family's troublemaker. After a while, I stopped whining. While I frequently felt alienated, Lisa continued to be their favorite. I put a lot of effort into my studies, was accepted to a reputable college, and left home. But Lisa always made it plain that she hated having me around when I returned home. She tampered with my possessions, disregarded me, and cut off my conversations with our parents. In an effort to get along, my parents encouraged us to avoid going home during breaks. Instead, my parents didn't appear to object, because they believed I was being independent by spending time with my friends' families. Lisa opted for community college after graduating from high school, since she lacked the grades necessary for college. As a result, she was never had to leave our parents' home. I currently work in San Francisco for a multinational company, and I truly love what I do. I don't often go home, although I do occasionally communicate with my folks. I have absolutely no communication with Lisa. Let's get to the story. My father suffered a heart attack that almost killed him. Thankfully, he miraculously survived and was taken to a hospital right away. I bought tickets and traveled back home to be there for them, as soon as my mother called to inform me about it. In addition to prescribing a number of drugs, the physicians also encouraged my father to begin exercising. My father told me how fortunate he was to have been saved, and said he wanted to spend more time with us, as a family after being released. I chose to stay at our place for a few days, since I could understand his perspective. It wasn't an issue, because I have the ability to work remotely at my job. But I could see that my presence was really upsetting Lisa. Since we were both older now, and I didn't want to argue after our dad's heart attack, I did my best to stay away from her. Since we hadn't gone anywhere together in a while, my father proposed that we all take a family vacation one morning over breakfast. Despite my initial misgivings, I consented, since I understood how important it was to my dad. Lisa, on the other hand, was not happy about it, but was forced to follow the plan. All of our travel and lodging arrangements were handled by my father. Since I sincerely wanted to spend time with my parents, I prepared my leave of absence in advance and told my coworkers not to get in touch with me during this period. However, I discovered that my airline ticket had been canceled when we got to the airport. My father asserted that he had purchased and paid for my ticket, and we exchanged perplexed glances. After more research, I discovered that the ticket bearing my name had been inexplicably canceled out of the four. I looked at Lisa as I stood there trying to make sense of what was happening. The devious smirk on her face was one I had seen so many before, the exact expression she would wear after successfully executing one of her cunning ploys. She was the one who had canceled my ticket, most likely from my father's computer. I knew at that same moment. She simply stood there, grinning at me, when I began to yell at her. Lisa had canceled my ticket since she didn't want me on the family trip in the first place. I told my dad. My mother didn't believe me at all, and said, "Your sister would never do something like that." She also accused me of being envious of my younger sister, and said that my ticket being canceled was just a random accident. In an attempt to defend it, my father also suggested that I shouldn't hold Lisa responsible, and that it might have been an airline error. My parents' inability to believe that their cherished miracle child could be responsible for such dishonesty completely irritated me. But there was nothing I could do now. There were no other flights scheduled for that day, and my ticket had already been canceled. Even though I might be able to get a flight the next day, I didn't look forward to going home, finding a new flight, and going it alone. This was meant to be a family vacation, after all. Additionally, I was terrified of having to stay in the same room as Lisa while on the vacation. Although I had thought she had changed over the years, I couldn't help but wonder what other plans she might have to ruin my vacation if she was responsible for canceling my plane ticket. At first, my father was apprehensive, saying they might all return home and arrange another vacation at a later time. But then he began to talk about how long it had been since he had taken a holiday. According to my mother, I frequently travel for work and wouldn't miss anything if I didn't go. I felt upset by their remarks because they seemed to be gently pressuring me to let them depart without me. They immediately agreed when I informed them they might stay on vacation if they so desired. I was disappointed that they didn't care if I joined them or not, even though I didn't want the money I had paid for the tickets and accommodations to be wasted. It became evident that they had no problem traveling as a family of 3 for the family holiday. Thus, I found myself standing by myself at the airport as my parents and Lisa left for their much-awaited journey. Instead of spending a lonely day at our family home, I made the decision to go back to my home in San Francisco. I made an effort to put the experience behind me and concentrated on making the most of the remainder of my leave. I made the most of my break by reading, reconnecting with old acquaintances, and taking a solo vacay. At times during the trip, my parents would video call me to express how much they were having fun without me. It seemed as though my absence had no bearing whatsoever on their trip. I wasn't devastated that I missed the trip, but I couldn't get rid of the sense of alienation. It was just another example of the favoritism that had always pervaded our family. But it came as a surprise when I wished for my parents to finally see Lisa for who she really was. My mother had left me multiple missed calls. When I woke up a few days into their vacation, I called her back right away, since I was worried that my father's health would suddenly deteriorate. Fortunately, she answered, although her voice was very upset. She told me that something really upsetting had happened when I asked whether everything was well. It seems that my father's vital cardiac meds were running out every day, and my parents had observed this. This was concerning since, given his precarious condition, my father could not afford to skip his medication. They were unsure if they could locate substitutes because they were in a strange nation. They looked everywhere in their room but couldn't find anything. Then, while using Lisa's hotel room to borrow sunscreen, my mother found all the missing pills hidden on Lisa's bedside table. It was a terrifying revelation. At last, my parents came to the realization that their cherished miracle child had been purposefully endangering and threatening my father's health. When my mother inquired as to whether they ought to speak with Lisa, her voice wavered. I suggested that they hold off until they got home in order to collect their ideas and supporting documentation. It would be pointless to confront Lisa right away because she was a skilled manipulator and would probably make up excuses. But that night, something unexpected occurred. Despite my caution, my parents must have gone up to Lisa. My father called me late at night and told me that Lisa was in jail. His voice was shaking. I was taken aback. He described how Lisa threw a complete fit when they asked her about the drugs. She hurled things, yelled obscenities, and mostly attacked my father, saying he had purchased a ticket for me when he ought never to have permitted me to join them on their family trip. Lisa promised my parents that she would give them a lesson they would never forget if they remained in my company. She snapped, and things quickly got out of hand until someone at the hotel phoned the police. Lisa was taken into custody after she refused to calm down and insulted the officers when they arrived. After a few hours, Lisa was freed, but at that point, my parents were powerless. My parents sought to postpone their flight since they were desperate to get home. But they found that their wallets and passports were gone. It turned out that they were stranded in a distant nation because Lisa had either concealed or thrown away their passports. My parents started to see Lisa for who she truly was for the first time. Having always stood up for Lisa, my mother was suddenly overcome, astonished, and upset at the discovery of her angelic daughter's true identity. They lacked the funds and paperwork to take a plane back, so she called me and begged for assistance. I informed her that they needed to locate their passports before I could transfer funds via Western Union. I was sure Lisa hadn't thrown them away. At last, my parents began to see that I had been telling the truth about Lisa's shenanigans the entire time. Despite not include me in the trip, they expressed regret for their actions and gratitude for my assistance. It was difficult to overlook the years of partiality that had cost me their love, even if I wanted to forgive them. Update 1. My parents contacted with information every day, and I became more and more nervous. My parents threatened to contact the police once more if Lisa didn't return their passports once she was released from jail. Lisa had no choice except to show where she had concealed them. My parents confronted Lisa when they got home and instructed her to gather her things and go. They had finally realized the truth about her destructive and deceptive behavior, and they had finally reached their breaking point. They were concerned that Lisa might steal my father's prescription drugs and jeopardize his health once more. Another yelling match resulted from this altercation. Lisa vented her rage and contempt by making false accusations about my parents. She stated that she felt pushed to the brink when they invited me on the trip, and that she didn't want to share them with anybody else. Lisa asserted that she was more than enough for them both, and insisted that they disown me. When my parents attempted to reason with her, she continued to accuse them. Lisa became so enraged and desperate that she threatened to tell everyone that they had abused and neglected her when she was a youngster. She intensified her threats, saying that if they persisted in demanding that she leave, she would go to the police and make false allegations against them. My parents were really concerned by these threats, since they are well-respected physicians in the neighborhood, and such accusations could damage their reputation. Since then, Lisa has persisted in making my parents' lives challenging. Lisa became enraged and began smashing things when she found out they were talking to me on a regular basis. To make matters worse, she continues taking my parents' car keys and concealing them, which makes it difficult for them to get to work each day. My mother phoned me crying just tonight, following yet another unfortunate event. Lisa wanted my mother to prepare dinner for her, so she threw a fit and yelled. Lisa went on a frenzy and broke furniture all around the home when my mother refused, claiming she was exhausted from work. Then, in order to keep our parents from sleeping, she withdrew to her room and turned up the music. My parents are suffering greatly emotionally and mentally as a result of the situation, which is getting worse. Although I had hoped they would realize Lisa's true character, I now fear she could actually endanger them. I can't even go back home, because I could set her off even more, which would result in more violent altercations. I'm making every effort to get my parents to seek legal advice in order to resolve this recurring issue once and for all. The greatest option to safeguard my parents and bring harmony back to our family seems to be through the legal system. Update 2. As many of you anticipated, Lisa has been arrested. This was an unavoidable result of her growing shenanigans. She attacked our parents with a knife one evening, following a furious dispute. They had to call the police because they were so terrified. Lisa was quickly arrested by officers on assault allegations. My parents felt it was time to look for a long-term solution while Lisa was in custody. They sought advice from a lawyer who helped them navigate the court system in order to remove Lisa from their house. Lisa had to vacate, according to a legal eviction notice they issued. Even if they found this decision difficult, it was essential to protect them. My parents only wanted her out of their house and didn't want to file any more charges. They gave her a written notice outlining all the legal specifics of why and when she had to leave, and they also bailed her out of jail. After that, they went to court with their attorney to start the eviction procedure, which involved suing Lisa. My parents were devastated by this development and felt terrible remorse for bringing their own daughter to court. But they knew there was nothing else they could do. After a while, the court formally ordered Lisa to vacate the house. They would be legally allowed to take her off the property if she didn't go voluntarily. By next week, Lisa should be gone. Now that they've taken a step toward taking back their house and their tranquility, my folks are finally beginning to exhale with relief. Although it has been a difficult trip, they are optimistic that after Lisa leaves, things will get better. Throughout this trauma, I have maintained a tight relationship with them, and I intend to take them to San Francisco for a few weeks. After everything they've been through, it will provide them with a much-needed respite and an opportunity to unwind. I'm excited to get to know them better and help them in any way that I can. Update 3. Reading through the hundreds of comments that have been left on my post has taken some time. Many of you recommended that we think about having Lisa assessed to see if there may be a mental health problem at work. The problem is that we cannot make Lisa go for a checkup against her will because she is an adult. We don't want to push her and add to the already complex scenario because of her violent outbursts. My parents went down to San Francisco to be with me for a few days, as I mentioned in my previous report. After everything they had been through in the past few months, they wanted a break. My parents started talking to me yesterday evening as we sat around the dining table in my comfortable apartment. Their words were filled with remorse and humility. They pleaded for my forgiveness, acknowledging that they had been unaware of Lisa's actual character for so long. My father apologized for not paying attention to my earlier warnings. He acknowledged that they were blind to the reality behind Lisa's endearing facade and never anticipated her to turn out this way. My mother agreed with my father and recognized the seriousness of their error in ignoring my worries about Lisa's actions throughout the years. As she expressed the anguish of learning how they had let me down by preferring Lisa, her voice faltered. I told them how much I valued their initiative in asking for my pardon. I talked about a number of distressing memories of the years of suffering I went through because of Lisa's behavior. When my parents heard what I had gone through on my own, they were completely taken aback and appalled. They apologized for the loneliness I had inside my own family and acknowledged the suffering I had endured. Since they never anticipated being pregnant with Lisa and always thought of her as their miracle child, my parents described how their partiality for her had influenced their decisions. Their voices were earnest, as they pleaded for my pardon for all those years. I had always desired their recognition. Therefore, it was a moment of mixed emotions for me. It was a turning point that gave our family dynamic much-needed honesty and clarity. Even though it might not have been the best approach to patch things up, we were now recognizing the problems that had afflicted our family for the first time in years. We all decided to work through this together after I informed them that it would take some time to regain their trust. As of right now, I want to enjoy every moment of my family's visit to me during the next few days. Update 4. My parents and I spent more time together as the days went by, taking leisurely dinners, visiting the lively streets of San Francisco, and just enjoying one another's company. Rebuilding the relationships that had been damaged by years of partiality and denial has been quite the struggle. I realized that their choice to turn to me for comfort was motivated by more than simply putting physical distance between them and Lisa. It was also a desire to reunite the family they had nearly lost. Like them, I needed a new beginning. Since then, my parents and I have spoken about what to do with Lisa. At the moment, she is lodging at a friend's house. Despite the chaos she has brought into our life, we cannot just leave her. Even if their daughter's conduct have been terrible, my parents feel a strong sense of duty to her as parents. We've accepted the possibility that her actions could point to more serious problems than simple purposeful mischief. To learn more about her situation, we intend to investigate the possibility of a mental health evaluation. Since Lisa is an adult, we are unable to coerce her into undergoing such an evaluation. Instead, we must devise a strategy to motivate her to freely seek assistance. When they return home, my parents want to get in touch with Lisa to see if she's willing to have a conversation. She still has a lot of anger toward me. Therefore, I don't want to get in touch with her because I don't want to make things worse for her mental health. Given her history of violence and hostility, I have urged my parents to meet her in a public setting to make her learn to regulate her emotions. We want Lisa to understand our point of view and, above all, to understand how much we care and love her. This is about resolving the problems that have caused tension in our relationships as a family, not about placing blame. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Am I the asshole for smacking a strange man with my palm, breaking his nose because he tries to start making awkward talk to me. I, 21 female, went to my local grocery store the other day to get 1 to 2 items and then go home. As I'm grabbing said items, they were on different aisles. I see a man, 45 to 55 years old, following me quite closely. You may say, oh, maybe it's just a weird coincidence. He wanted something on that aisle. Number. He didn't pick up or look at anything, didn't even have a cart. A little more context. I was wearing a dress. Not ridiculously short, but it was short because it's 90 degrees outside. Anyways, I got uncomfortable and just went and checked out. I didn't see the man until I was almost in my car. He walks up and tries to start making awkward small talk. How old I am. The fact that my license plate is in a different state than the one I was in, where I was coming from, if I have a boyfriend. I told him I wasn't interested and asked him to please leave me alone. He didn't and got closer to me. I have a very big ick about people boxing me into small spaces, trauma, and so I said, quite loudly, please back away from me. I don't like this. He laughed and basically said, oh, she's upset. What a sweetheart. And is now 3 inches away from me. So I panicked and slammed the palm of my hand into his nose, which broke it. He began screaming at me, but I was having a panic attack and just got into my car and left. I told some friends about it, and some say I'm at an age because I could have just ducked away, and some say that that's a completely normal response for someone who has trauma. So, am I the asshole? Comment 1. You did good. Taught that masher a valuable lesson. Maybe saved a few other women the displeasure of his advances. Reply 1. I have not heard someone use the word masher since my mother died 15 years ago. That was her favorite word for a creep. Comment 2. Not the asshole, but the friends who are telling you that you are the asshole for defending yourself certainly are. Let's see what they would do in that situation. Reply 2. People like to think they would never be a victim. They like to blame or criticize reactions, because if the victim was wrong or made a mistake, well, they will not be a victim because they are better, smarter, etc. I was buckled into the driver's seat, wearing a winter coat, and had my window down to get gas, New Jersey. The attendant was being creepy, but when I handed him the money, he grabbed my hand and then leaned in the window going for a kiss. All I could do was slap at him with my one free hand and scream until he laughed at me and walked off. So many people had ideas about what I should have done. Punch him, throw coffee at him, magically have a weapon on me, etc. But I was buckled into a seat wearing a bulky coat with the steering wheel in front of me and a goon coming in at me through the window. No room to move or escape. Slapping and screaming and hitting the horn were the only options. When someone haughtily told me this is why they carry a knife, I had to point out that if it is in their waistband or pocket, reaching for it while wearing a coat and buckled in, while someone is holding your right hand and you are trying to get free, is not happening. Everyone thought they could do better. The only one who had anything to say I could have used was my dad. Should have gouged his eyes out and tried for an ear. Now that would have been a possibility. A thumb in the eye would not make him laugh like my slapping. But everything else was just people trying to figure out how I was stupid enough to be in a bad position so they can feel safe because they are smarter than me. My fiancé asked for an open relationship just weeks before our wedding. Am I the asshole for canceling the wedding? We were less than 2 weeks away from getting married when she asked me to accompany her to therapy. She was already seeing a therapist on her own and asked me to join her for a conversation before the wedding so we could be entirely honest with each other. That sounded unusual to me. I assumed we were already entirely honest with one another. After all, we were getting married in 2 weeks. Right? She was also quite protective of her therapy sessions and did not discuss them openly. I'd never met her therapist, so being welcomed there felt out of place. The day came, and I attended the session. To protect myself, I kept my phone open and recorded audio. My fiancé had already arrived, and I had to wait 20 minutes before being let inside. The therapist greeted me, shook my hand, and we exchanged light talk. She informed me I wasn't as my fiancé had portrayed me. I assumed she was attempting to congratulate me. The therapist then turned to my fiancée and told her this may be more difficult than we anticipated. That freaked me out. But I remained calm, smiled politely, and did not respond. The therapist gave a brief speech that I do not like to repeat. As the therapist began emphasizing that we live in a modern world, my fiancée grasped my hand and expressed her desire for us to have a non-traditional marriage in the future. I grinned, not quite knowing what that meant. I assumed she was referring to seeking an equal partnership in which she would not be expected to give up her job or independence. A current girl power message. But it was something else entirely. She was talking about wanting to be able to sleep with other men once we married. I was stunned. It's 2018, I reminded myself, but seriously. She went on to say that she deeply loved me and would not be happy with me having the same freedom, since the thought of me being with other women would break her heart. She couldn't take the idea of someone else stealing me from her. I allowed them to finish chatting. They both appeared to gain confidence, most likely as a result of my silence. It felt like they had practiced this. After they were finished, I asked the therapist if she was licensed. Her reply indicated that she had not expected that to be my first question. She agreed, so I instructed her to explain to my fiancé why we would not be marrying and would no longer be a couple, effective immediately. I wished them both luck and exited the office. I'm considering reporting to the therapist. I'm not sure whether I should report her to the clinic or a licensing board, but I believe there was some professional misconduct, and I want her to be held accountable. That session did not go well for me at all. To be clear, that conversation would never end well. Even if my fiancé had wanted an open marriage in which I could sleep with other women, I would still have called off the wedding. That is not a marriage. It is a fake. It's also occurred to me that she might have already cheated on me. Looking back, certain things do not add up, and now that I have clarity, I feel foolish. I listened to the recording again, and I still can't believe what they said. Anyway, I called the wedding off. I'm normally a laid-back guy. I avoid arguments and conflicts because I follow principles and utilize common sense. Perhaps that gave my ex the impression that I was a pushover, but she was completely mistaken. After listening to the recording a few times, I'm convinced the therapist understood I wasn't how my fiancé described me in their sessions. Hence the comment, "This may be harder than we thought." Now that the wedding has been canceled, people are starting to ask questions, and I'm not sure how to handle it. I'm sure my ex is conducting damage control, but I have the video. And if she goes too far with her version of events, I won't be afraid to tell others what she was truly proposing. My parents and family also want answers, but I'm not sure what my ex has told them. I don't want them to think I was a fool for allowing things to progress to the point where she felt comfortable enough to tell me she wanted to sleep with other guys. She has also been blowing up my phone, my best friend's phone, and my brother's phone, saying, "We can work on this." She believes she did not understand what was stated during the therapy session, and is willing to do whatever to make things right. This was the therapist's suggestion. She was opposed to it, etc. The final shriek of a dying siren. Her cries fell on deaf ears, and I owned those ears. We were also working on obtaining a loan to purchase a home, but I canceled everything. I effectively severed any ties we had, monetarily or otherwise. Her present appeal is that during treatment, she revealed her worries regarding our sexual history. I had much more partners than she did, and the therapist purportedly suggested that we level the field. Regardless of the truth, I'll report that therapist as soon as I figure out where and how. This post is largely a rant, but I'd like to know how you would handle questions from friends and family. My ex is definitely conducting her own damage control, and I don't want this to become a he said she said issue. I have the recording and was wondering if I should share it with the relevant parties. My ex does not know I have the recording. Small update. I'm at work and just received confirmation that the journal has been returned to my ex. I sent it early this morning via courier from our office, and she had to sign a confirmation that she received it. As several have suggested, I concluded that reading it would be ineffective because she never accepted responsibility for the incident. Update 1. Aside from the jokes, the 2 weeks after my initial post have been intriguing. Last Monday, I spoke with a lawyer at work about my problem with a therapist. At first, he assumed I was joking and inquired about the prank. I offered to play the recording for him, and he accepted. The next day, we reviewed the recording together, and he pointed out stuff I hadn't observed. The therapist consistently used language such as we think, we want, and we decided. She never once said, "Your ex asked me to talk with you," or "Your ex wants you to know." It was always either we this or we that. The lawyer inquired as to my ultimate goal, whether I intended to file a lawsuit. I informed him I wasn't going to sue, but I wanted to report the therapist to the relevant authorities. We decided to write 2 letters. One to the clinic where the therapist works, and another to the American Psychological Association, APA, which validated her accreditation. By Wednesday, a few more people at work had become aware of the problem, including one of the case researchers. She looked up information about the therapist, including internet ratings and contact information for 2 of her prior clients. The therapist did not have the best reviews. Several people were furious with her, and we were able to reach 2 of them via social media. When we described the scenario, they were eager to assist. Their stories were not any better than mine. The letters expanded in length, as we included signed reports from the other 2 people, as well as my personal explanation of how my ex changed after starting therapy, and a thorough account of my session with the doctor. Last Friday, I met with my ex's parents. They arrived at my parents' place and we had a conversation. My ex was also present, and further material was revealed, which was then included in the report on the therapist. This week, reports were sent out and the clinic responded. They called our office Thursday morning, most likely to see if the allegation was legitimate. We spoke with one of their lawyers over the phone, and after we determined it was serious, someone on the other end was heard saying, "Well, crap." They stated that they were treating the situation extremely seriously. One of my coworkers noted that the clinic had received prior complaints, but never one as well documented, which could explain their prompt response. Their letter also stated that they were notifying the APA, which could have additional pressure. I'm not sure what will happen, but I consider my problem to be resolved. However, after speaking with the other 2 former patients, I strongly hope that the therapist will be probed. She sounds insane and certainly has a plan. She also wrecked their relationships, of whom one was a woman. Finally, my ex and her parents. My folks contacted last Friday and invited me to visit after work. When I arrived, I was surprised to see both my ex and her parents there. My initial thought was to go. This meeting was meant to be on my terms, but it appeared that she was attempting to control the situation. Let me tell you, it was not going to happen. My ex waited for me outside. She looked great. If there was ever a girl you wanted your parents to meet, she was it. She informed me that they were coming to speak with me and see if we could resolve this. They did not refer to her parents. Either she never informed them what happened, or she told them a version of the story that they did not believe. She had a journal with her and stated that she began writing in it before treatment and continued until Friday morning. She said I should read it since it will clear up all the uncertainty. I informed her it wasn't a book club. I wanted to go inside and start the chat, but she requested for 10 minutes to talk before meeting with her parents. She continued handing me her journal and began crying. Then my sister arrived, followed by my ex's sister. They had been there all along and came out to check on us. So I took the diary, walked inside, said hello to everyone, and then left my ex in the back of the garden, in the most remote part of my parents' yard. They have a spacious garden with plenty of trees and benches. She left her job owing to the stress, which resulted in a breakdown that never improved. She was no longer visiting her therapist. Initially, she began treatment for work-related issues, but it gradually turned to focus on our relationship, which appeared to be the only thing the therapist was interested in. She never explained to her folks why she became my ex. Now she was seeing a different therapist. I just listened. She shifted the subject to us, informing me that I would be in charge. I'd handle the funds, have access to all of her devices, and be able to track her activities. Any property we owned would be in my name, and she would do everything I asked to win my trust. She basically reaffirmed what she had been expressing in her messages throughout the previous weeks. She listed far more items than I can recall. I'm not sure how she believed this was a healthy way for either of us to live. I asked if she had cheated. She told me that she had the opportunity to cheat, but never did. I believed her, but it made me angry. What exactly did she mean by opportunity? If you are in a committed relationship, you do not place yourself in a position where infidelity is even a possibility. You do not want the opportunity. It's similar to stating, I had the opportunity to kill someone today. Why? What were you doing that resulted in such an opportunity? And why term it an opportunity, as if it were something good? That pretty much concluded our 10 minutes. I told her we should go talk to our parents. And we did. I requested our sisters to leave us alone, since what we were about to discuss was not their concern. My sister huffed and puffed, but a stone home can withstand hurricanes, and she wasn't one. I detailed what happened, how the therapy session went, and what I decided. I didn't say I had a recording since I didn't have to. My ex corroborated everything I had said, which astonished me. Her father had teary eyes, which shattered my heart. Her mother inquired if this was how she felt they had raised her, and requested an explanation. My ex basically told them the same story. Work-related stress, depression, a breakdown. Therapy focusing solely on our relationship. The therapist convincing her that our relationship was the source of all her stress, that she needed an open relationship to avoid losing me, and that she needed to level her sexual experience with mine. She said my reply jolted her out of her slump. She has quit her job and is seeking something less demanding. She'll do anything to get me back. My ex referenced the diary again, saying that if I read it, it would explain everything, and that while she disagreed with the therapist's opinions, she went along with them, since the therapist was an authoritative figure with experience. Our parents glanced at me and I said, someone's private journal is not the type of literature I read, unless they're a dead poet. A big mistake. My purpose was to convey that private journals only become literature when written by a writer or a leader, and that they are typically published after the author's death. I was also hoping they'd get the message that I didn't want to read her notebook, since it wouldn't change anything. What had been done was done. Everyone looked at me as if I had wished death on my ex. You could sense the animosity in the air, so I gave in and muttered, fine, fine. Promising to read the journal. You win some, you lose some, and then you use the incorrect words, resulting in even more losses. My ex is currently seeing a new therapist. She showed her parents the confirmation emails for her appointments. He's an older man with a white beard, much like Freud. I searched him up online. He is married, attends conferences, and has written a couple books that are accessible on Amazon. Seems like a solid character. Then her parents said, can't you kids work this out? That was the second thing that made me angry that day. As if this were child's play, and we should just listen to the adults since we were too young to control our emotions or judge what constitutes an irreversible betrayal. We were just kids who needed to work things out. So I reclaimed some ground after my earlier remark about the Dead Poet Society, and that was how the day concluded. We've known each other for 9 years and been in a relationship for 5. Even if there are real causes for her behavior, how can you return to normalcy? This was not even a reset. My perspective on my ex has shifted dramatically. She has become a stranger to me. Yes, I still find her appealing, very attractive. There's no disputing how great she looked last Friday. But it was also calculated, I won't lie. Her hair was styled the way I like it, and she wore a dress I got for her as well as the shoes I prefer the most. I could even detect a bit of the perfume I had given her. The journal is on my nightstand. I have not read it, and I doubt I ever will. I looked through it to see if it was actually a year old, and it is. As you work your way through the entries, you can see how the pages are folded and how the ink has aged. The pen she used was attached to the journal. When I examined it, it matched the ink, and the ink level appeared to be consistent with a year of use. It's not a forgery. Everything about it is compatible with a year of wear and tear. I don't see how reading it would help. It feels like a tool for playing with my psyche. Not really. I don't think she started writing it a year ago, with the intention of using it for manipulation. If what she told me is true, her new therapist advised she share the journal with me. When people ask why the wedding is off, I tell them, we had a huge difference of opinion that we couldn't resolve. More or less. But if her sister discovers the true reason, which is likely given her tight relationship with their mother, everyone will find out soon enough. Our parents want us to meet again next week. They told me to read the journal, which might assist. Given our extensive history, perhaps we can work on it and start over. They believe she will receive therapy, recover, and remain the lady I fell in love with. Just not right now. They can see I still adore her. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so theatrical. I don't think I'll meet them next Friday, but she did look stunning. I'd like to thank the community for their support and assistance. It's been enough to help me develop a strategy for dealing with the therapist. Thank you to everyone who shared resources and information about what to do next. What do I do with her journal? Return it, keep it, or read it 90 years from now? Update 2. The therapist no longer works at the facility. The clinic's lawsuit is most likely the primary motivator for this decision. Someone unrelated to my case has sued them. I don't have any other information. The therapist attempted to reach me but was unsuccessful. I believe she learned about my report on her and requested more information. But who knows? I didn't interact with her. She was blocked, and her questions remained unanswered. A faint voice in the back of my head suggests that filing that report may not have been the best move. It could attract unwelcome attention, and the persons behind the lawsuit could approach me for assistance. Despite this, I can't keep a satisfied grin off my face, knowing that the therapist is in trouble. To those who have questioned whether I have emotions, if this isn't proof enough, I'm not sure what would. And I hope you understand sarcasm. Mela, on the other hand, complicates matters considerably. I added a brief update to my previous post concerning her journal. I decided to return it, and I was quite clinical in my approach. On Monday morning, the courier we use at work handed the journal to her. I attached a note explaining why I had not read it. Everything came down to her refusal to accept responsibility for the situation. By giving me the journal, I felt she was washing her hands of the situation, putting the duty of finding solutions on my shoulders. In return, I washed my hands of it. To be honest, I felt a pang of sadness the moment they told me the journal had been returned. Perhaps I should have read it. Later that day, Mela arrived at my workplace. She didn't cause a scene, nothing like that. She waited patiently in the lobby. Her goal was to wait until I ended my workday and then talk to me. Naturally, I discovered she was present quite quickly. My options were to send her away or talk to her. So we talked. Several architects planned the end of our relationship. 1. Stress. This was something I was aware of, but I had never recognized how serious it was. In retrospect, when she began seeking for a therapist to help with work stress, I should have been more conscious of the issue. But she always said everything was all right, so why shouldn't I believe her? Whether she was seeing a therapist or not, she had a breakdown at work that she kept hidden from me and her family. 2. Miscarriage. I may have become a father. She miscarried. She told me she was a few weeks pregnant and wanted to make it special. However, a few days later, she began bleeding. And that was it. She never told me about it because she was worried I would think she was unworthy. She knows how badly I want to be a father, and she assumed this would lead me to believe she couldn't bear children. This idea is completely ludicrous. 3. Friends. The first made it clear in the comments that we had friends in open relationships. One such acquaintance phoned Mila over a year ago and invited her to lunch. She quickly began venting her feelings over her broken marriage onto Mila. Her husband, like me, had far more lovers than she did. In my situation, there were 26 previous partners. Her husband had 70. He demanded an open relationship from the day they married, and she has been miserable ever since. Apparently, Mila would face the same fate if she did not take care of me. This friend informed Mela that I exhibited the same symptoms as her husband before they married. 4. Family secrets. Those we love are not always who we believe they are. Our fathers work in academia and have known each other for 30 to 35 years. They routinely go to work-related gatherings and parties, usually with their wives. I met Mila at one such occasion. I went with my father to meet a professor who could aid me with my career. Mila was there instead of her mother, who had a scheduling conflict, or so she was told. Her parents were having a difficult time as a result of her father's infidelity. Mila just learned about this recently, when she discussed the concerns raised by the previously mentioned friend with her mother. This was a great shock for her. Her parents always appeared to be the ideal couple, a role model. They certainly patched things up and maintained the appearance of a wonderful marriage throughout. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, combined with a therapist with questionable objectives. And that's how you end a relationship. The therapist was excited to plan my open relationship and validated what my friend had said. Men like me would never be pleased with only one woman. I would eventually seek more, and the only way to cure my cheating impulses was for Mela to sleep with other men until we evened out the numbers. Of course, I would be opposed to it, but that was okay. If I loved Mela, I could understand. This was a multi-layered concept. It would not only cure my alleged cheating conduct, but it would also affirm my love for her and enhance our bond. Naturally, this approach would have failed, and I believe that is precisely what the therapist was going for. Our relationship would not have survived. What the therapist did not foresee was how quickly I would react, or so I believe now. Mela and I met every day for the rest of the week, and she answered every question I asked her. One thing was clear, she was willing to fight for our relationship, whereas I was ready to leave things. At the end of the week, I had to depart for another city for work. The trip was intended to be 2 weeks, but it was extended to 4 weeks. More billable hours. Before leaving, I gave Mela a copy of the therapy session tape. She knew I had it. It was one of the first things I discussed with her when she arrived at my employment on Monday. Listening to the recording rattled her to her core. What she remembered about the treatment session differed significantly from what was on the recording. I believe she finally understood where all of my acts and conduct towards her originated from. During those 3 weeks, I had little interference from anyone and was left to my own devices. It was wonderful. Several individuals in the comments offered me a beer if I ever visited their city, and I accepted. It was my first time meeting another Redditor, and surprise, he was not a weirdo. He and his wife were excellent individuals. Mila paid a visit in the fourth week. We had been in communication for the preceding 3 weeks, discussing a variety of things, most of which were about us. One important concern was finalizing our honeymoon plans. We were meant to go to France for 2 weeks following the wedding, but neither of us could go right away. So it was scheduled for 3 months later, and it was quickly approaching. We already had non-refundable travel tickets and hotel reservations, but we no longer had us. That fourth week, we chatted more and decided to go to France as friends. I can already imagine eyes rolling. But France was incredible. Visiting a place like that reminds you that the United States is medieval in comparison. Americans are easily identifiable in museums. To be honest, learning how to act in foreign nations should be required in our schools. We returned from France as a couple again. It wasn't due to the magic of Paris, though. We're not back to our previous selves yet, and there's more work to be done. Several points we agreed on, in no particular order. 1. Mela is seeking for a new work that is less stressful. 2. Our friends in open marriages have been branded a toxic influence, and we will no longer socialize with them. 3. We both like the name Mela, and it will be used for our first daughter. Thank you, France. 4. Never hide anything from your partner, such as a miscarriage. I'm quite upset about this one. 5. We'll acquire a dog and a cat. 6. Mela will keep seeing her current therapist for a time. 7. When we do marry, it will be a simple wedding with only our immediate family. 8. We'll probably visit Italy next. I suppose this is not the thrilling update everyone was hoping for. Many of you requested an update, and if you were hoping for rage, hatred, or revenge, I'm sure there is a version of this story in which those things are feasible. But as I've stated from the start, I didn't detest Mala. My actions were based on self-preservation at the moment. Her behaviors indicated that she wanted something other than what I believed we both agreed on. There is no reason to be concerned about her mental state. When her therapist's impact faded, she returned to her previous self, more or less. These events have unavoidably altered her, but she is now in a better state. You'll recall that she promised me control over her finances, tracking her location and full access to all of her devices. Aside from my disinterest in such a lifestyle, those were simply attempts to continue the conversation. We agree to be open with our devices, but we have always been, so nothing has changed there. We will continue to share our finances, as we have always done. Thank you to everyone who left comments and sent me private messages. Some of the advice I received was invaluable, and I'm eternally thankful. Writing these pieces and interacting with you all has been quite therapeutic, a great way to relieve stress. I reluctantly agreed to an open marriage with my wife. When I fell in love with a coworker, my ex lost control and tried to ruin everything. I, 47, have been married to Lisa, 42, for 17 years. However, we only lived together for roughly 7 years. A decade ago, I discovered Lisa cheating on me, and she admitted that she had fallen out of love and desired an open marriage. We have 2 children. The older was a toddler, and the younger was still a baby when this occurred. It was heartbreaking to me. She stated that having back-to-back pregnancies had a negative impact on her physical and emotional health, and she wished to freshen up. Unfortunately, her method of relaxation was to bring various men into bed. Divorce was complicated at that stage, with 2 small children and a meager income. I decided to let her live her life as I relocated upstairs in our duplex home. We became co-parents for our children. It wasn't as hunky-dory as it seems. We split up with a lot of hatred and name-calling, largely from me since she cheated. But soon, we got caught up in work and life, and I moved on and became more relaxed. A few months ago, I met Kathy, 35, fat, at work. She's my junior, and we hit it off immediately. Bonding with her felt more natural than anything I'd experienced in a long time. It wasn't a romantic connection at first. We connected as understanding coworkers and spent time together outside of work, still simply as friends. We made out last month, and I had a unique feeling for her. She has been crashing at my apartment on a regular basis since then, which technically affects my wife. Lisa is still my wife, and we are still married. Lisa has been acting strangely these days. Kathy hangs out with me and attempts to command authority like a wife. I had to remind her that we are separated, and I can live my life as she has for years. It is difficult to express what she has been doing, but I will try. Kathy and I were eating dinner one evening in my kitchen. Lisa arrived and asked, "Can I join you guys?" It became an extremely awkward time for both of us. Kathy and I gazed at each other, surprised. Lisa sat down with her dish without waiting for a response. We ate supper like strangers, smiling politely despite Lisa's forced chat. Our supper was ruined, but I gave Lisa the benefit of the doubt, believing she was simply trying to fit in. Then there was another incident in which she was bossy, attempting to impose her rights as a wife. Kathy and I were upstairs watching a movie when Lisa barged in and requested me to join her. When I questioned what was wrong, she answered, "Your children need you. The younger one needs your assistance with a scientific project." I was surprised, since we had divided the schoolwork. I help the older child, and she takes care of the smaller. I informed her that I had already done my part for our eldest kid, and that this was now her responsibility. She became enraged and exclaimed, "Is this kid not yours? Instead of assisting him, you're here lurking." This resulted in a full-blown confrontation between Lisa and me. Kathy, feeling embarrassed, excused herself and left. Kathy told me, after that episode, that she would no longer hang out at my apartment, though we continue to meet at hers. But why should I sacrifice my life when I've never touched hers? She's been living her life her way, bringing whatever mail she wants into the house, and I've always looked the other way. Lisa is purposely attempting to break the link I formed with someone. I addressed Lisa the other day, and she replied she wasn't worried by my close relationship with Kathy. She refused to accept her actions, claiming I was overthinking. I informed her that if she continued to intervene in my life, I would consider getting divorced. She had tears in her eyes and apologized for disturbing us. She was only worried about our son's unfinished assignment and was preoccupied with her work, so she asked me for assistance. I claimed it wasn't a call for help. It was nothing short of gaslighting. She then contacted Kathy, apologized, and invited her to come over. Kathy accepted the apologies but set boundaries, explaining that she preferred to meet me at her home. I am currently in a difficult situation. I want to get rid of Lisa, but I'm worried she'll destroy my growing connection with Kathy. I'm thinking of obtaining a divorce. The only reason I didn't file for divorce back then was that I didn't want my children to have to pick between their mother and father. Now I'm contemplating if I should go forward with it and prioritize myself over everyone else, including my children. Should I wait a few years for my children to grow up before making a move? I'm not sure Kathy will wait for me till then. Oh, I'm still upset with Lisa over her decision to open the marriage. I'm also upset with myself for agreeing with her and not pushing back enough. Edit. Apologies for all of the jargon and missing facts, particularly on Lisa's adultery and our separation dynamics. People say it's tough to give counsel without clarity, so here it is. It'll be long, so skip it if you don't want to learn about the past. This was roughly 10 years ago, so I may have missed a few specifics. Lisa began acting up 4 months after our younger kid was born. She wouldn't let me get close and said she wasn't ready for sex. Pregnancy and breastfeeding had made her wary of closeness. I supported her decision, but we were slipping apart emotionally. I recommended we go to couples therapy, but she dismissed it, saying it was simply her postpartum phase and she'd recover shortly. It took almost a year before I lost patience and addressed her, stating that we needed to address the elephant in the room. She either attended therapy with me or gave me the truth about what was wrong. She gaslighted me, accusing me of being insensitive and other nonsense, but I refused to let it go this time and probed for the truth. I snooped through her phone but found nothing definite because she had deleted the majority of the chats and emails. I'm not sure how I got the clue, but one day, she mentioned she was going shopping with her pals. I followed her automobile and discovered her infidelity. She was sleeping with a young college student. I knocked rather than barged into his residence. Lisa was on the couch in her lingerie, trying to cover herself, when a shirtless guy responded. I grabbed the guy by the neck and was ready to strike him when Lisa interfered, pleading with me to leave him alone. She cried, saying it wasn't his fault. He was only one of the guys she was hooking up with. It blew my mind. What the heck? One of the guys. She admitted to hooking up with several guys. The guy standing in front of me had no idea what was going on, or that she was married with children. We returned home, and I did everything any man in my position would do. No, I don't hit. I'm not a violent man. I contacted her parents and confessed the facts in front of everyone. I insisted on the divorce. I even engaged a lawyer and discussed the case. But as things went, the lawyer revealed the truth, which shook me. There was no genuine benefit for me, only loss. Because the kids were so young, they'd require their mother. At most, I could gain joint custody, but Lisa would have to allow me to meet with them and dictate the terms. Yes, I could take her to court if she didn't follow the court order, but how often does a regular man want to become engaged in legal battles? We live in a no-fault state, so there is no moral policing for her. I still have to pay alimony, and child support is required. So basically, I handle all of the tasks of a father, but I rely on Lisa to spend time with my children. Lisa, on the other hand, was opposed to divorce. She proposed that rather than divorcing, we open our marriage and return to each other whenever we wanted. I knew I never wanted her back, but divorce was too expensive at the time. The only practical choice was to separate and live as housemates and co-parents with our children. So we did it. Though she calls it an open marriage or whatever she wants, I consider it a failed strategy. And we have parted. Lisa has been with several partners over the last 10 years. Though she claims she had no significant relationships with any of them, I believe she had at least 3 sexual partners. They visited our house, and she went trekking and on vacation with them. It was difficult for me to see her bringing different guys into our home. First her adultery, then her multiple partners in our bedroom. We own a duplex house. I moved the guest bedroom upstairs. The stairs leading to it are accessible through the back door. We bought the property from an Asian couple who built it so their grown-up son could live upstairs in peace. Unfortunately, the son moved out, and the couple sold it to us since it was too big for them. The main entry to the house leads into a living room with a large closed kitchen, a dining area, a master bedroom, and a pantry that we converted into our children's room. Upstairs, there is a guest room the same size as the master bedroom, and the rest of the space is dedicated to a huge library area for reading and hosting parties. That space leads to the roof of the home, which has a little patio. Since I was moved upstairs, I could see much of what was going on downstairs. I hoped I could close my eyes, but for my children's sake, I remained attentive. I initially joined the dating scene, but after a few months, it felt hollow and useless. I discontinued it and concentrated on other important matters. I joined a badminton club to improve my athletic body. I had been a sports fan in college, so I returned to playing field games on weekends. I also joined a hiking club that plans solo hikes every 2 months. You cannot bring a friend, spouse, or someone you know. You hike alone, and there are others who do as well. It was tremendous fun. I did that for 2 years straight, and now only do it twice a year. I've had a few hookups over the last 10 years, but no emotional affairs or long-term relationships. I didn't feel connected to anyone else. Kathy's situation is different. I feel good around her. She's the woman I believe I can give love another chance with. But now Lisa, the devil of my life, has returned to hunt me down. The scenario remains the same. Kathy refuses to come to my apartment. I'm concerned she'll withdraw herself from me, and I don't want to lose her. The scenario forces me to choose between Kathy and my children, and I'm having difficulty making a decision. Update 1. Hello everyone. Thank you for all your suggestions and remarks. I appreciate everything, good and terrible. I sought therapy, which greatly aided me in determining my focus point and what I want out of life at this time. As several of you mentioned, the children are nearing their teen years, so it will only be a matter of a few years before they leave to lead their own lives. It makes no sense to pass up my chance to be happy with Kathy. I had an open discussion with Kathy. I told her about my feelings. I told her I wanted to be with her, and if she felt the same way, we could work things out. She claimed she feels the same way but is hesitant due to my family dynamics. She simply does not feel comfortable around my legal wife. She is fine with the youngsters surrounding me, however. I said I could figure this out. I'm going to move out and the kids can choose where they want to live. They are mature enough to make that choice, and they can alternate between mom and dad's. Kathy agreed with the plan. My therapist proposed counseling for the children, in which they might be informed of our marital status in an age-appropriate way. Lisa flipped out when I informed her about the counseling. She stated I was being selfish and damaging our children's life by getting serious with Kathy, and that I should put my family first over my own selfish goals. I lost my cool at that. I asked, "Really, Lisa? Are you the one advocating family values and morality? What happened to your ethics while you were getting knocked up by various men when your children were still breastfeeding and rolling in their cribs?" I asked her to back off and brought the children to the counselor. It was useful. The children responded well and appreciated that we had banded together for their cause. They also agreed that I deserved to be happy for the rest of my life. I informed Lisa that I would be filing for divorce. She pretended to be surprised and began sobbing. She stated, "I thought we decided never to divorce and to be together throughout. Now that you have found this woman, you are leaving your family to be with her. I've also met a lot of men who wanted to marry me, but I never gave up my married life for them." I responded, "Stop trying to guilt trip me. This is not helping. Cut the bullshit and sign the paperwork. I'll be paying for the children's education until college, and you can retain the house and the car. This will be your alimony. I will be moving out. I am prioritizing my pleasure over money because I can now afford it. Back then I couldn't." She cried and tried everything she could to convince me out of get divorced. She stated I could move out and live with Kathy while still married to her. I said, "I adore Kathy and do not want her to be dubbed my mistress. I know no one calls her that, but you would. You can go to any length to humiliate others. The paperwork should arrive any day soon. I'm moving in with Kathy next month. I am waiting for my children's annual tests to be completed. I'll be taking them on a trip and then moving out. I'll feel relieved when everything is settled." Update 2. I'm telling you, this woman is a true piece of work. As I said in my previous report, I was on holiday with the children. This woman seized the opportunity to carry out her nasty scheme. Lisa wept her way to Kathy, telling her to back off. She informed her that she was breaking up our family and that our children would suffer as a result. Lisa attempted to guilt Kathy, but when Kathy refused, Lisa said that I wasn't serious about her and that she was simply a fling for me. Lisa is a cunning, ruthless woman. She knows precisely how to play her cards. She knew I was in a low network zone with the kids, so she promised not to call me. And she didn't. If Kathy had been any other woman, she would have freaked out at the fling phrase. But she remained calm and waited for my return. She had my hotel number, but did not bother me. That's what I admire about her. She's a confident woman despite my complicated situation. When I arrived home and learned of Lisa's spiteful move, I marched up to her door and yelled at her. I should have done this sooner to get the garbage out of her mind. Her entitled behavior has gone too far, and no one will tolerate it any longer. I have moved out of my house. My children have also decided to stay with me, but we do not have a spare room. Therefore, I'm looking for a larger property to accommodate them. Until then, kids are remaining with their mother. When I was moving out, Lisa performed a variety of tantrums, ranging from guilt-tripping to ranting, gaslighting to sobbing and pleading for another opportunity. She asked me to give our relationship one more chance. I told her that our relationship had ended 10 years ago. We were only housemates and co-parents. The truth is, I've moved on from loving her. She is nothing to me. I love Kathy and want to spend the rest of my life with her. When Lisa received the divorce papers, she tore them up. My lawyer had to issue her a letter threatening to sue her for destroying a legal document. Only then did she calm down and consent to sign them. The divorce proceedings are ongoing. I haven't followed up on my soon-to-be ex-wife since then. I went to pick up my children twice, but did not enter the home. Yes. Several of you inquired about my children's ages. They are now 11 and 13, mature enough to understand the divorce and separation. Update 3. I am pleased to inform you that my soon-to-be ex-wife, STBX, is now officially my ex-wife. The main point of this update is that the divorce is finalized, and my children have moved in with me. They will visit their mother every 2 weeks or whenever they wish. The last month has been hectic, renting a house and relocating belongings. We didn't tell Lisa about the kids moving in with me until I rented a new house. We all knew she'd be upset, so we decided to wait as long as possible before telling her. The kids advised packing their bags and sneaking off with me when Lisa wasn't looking. But I chose to handle things legally. I did not want to get into another argument with that woman. According to our divorce agreement, we must give each other 3 days' notice if we intend to take the children for more than 2 days. So I returned home and informed Lisa that the children wanted to live with me, and that I would pick them up in 3 days. As expected, she freaked out. Fortunately for us, she did not become violent, breaking things and all, which would have made things easier for us. Instead, she took the emotional way. She held the children, cried, apologized for everything, and begged them not to leave her. She did her best to emotionally manipulate them into staying with her. She was even successful with the younger child, who stated that he wanted to stay with Mama. Kathy had warned me that circumstances like these may occur, so I was expecting a last-minute change of heart. When my younger kid called, I told him, "Cool. Dad loves you no matter what." But my oldest son was strong in his choice to move out. So I answered, "Sure. I'll pick you up." I'm not sure what happened in the meantime, but when I went to pick him up, both boys were prepared with their luggage. I hugged both of them and led them away. I didn't inquire as to what had occurred. It was already upsetting enough for them, and I didn't want to further the situation. Kathy and I are attempting to make them feel at ease in our new home. We're involving them in the process of setting up their rooms, ensuring that everything matches their preferences. I expected Lisa to make one more effort to stop the children from leaving the house, but she had already given up. She simply sat there, crying and screaming. She hugged the boys firmly, apologized for her actions, and assured them that she loved them. She stated they were welcome to return to Mama's whenever they pleased. Before I departed, she asked if I had time for coffee. Her appeal sounded innocent and sincere, so I accepted. Her tone conveyed regret and she apologized. This time, it did not sound false. She confessed, "I was delusional all along, thinking you would never leave me. When Kathy entered your life, I did not see her as a threat. I assumed she was simply one of those flings that will die out in a month. I believe I took you for granted because of the safety you gave for me and the kids. Despite everything I did to you, I didn't realize I was mean and narcissistic until it was too late. I simply smiled and hid my emotions. I rose up to leave, and she approached to hug me. I hugged her back. This was our first hug in 10 years. I can't really absorb how I felt about it, and I can't describe how I feel today following our final talk. I'm not pleased or sad, just numb. That's how it is. My life has changed dramatically during the previous 6 to 7 months. I suppose it will take time for me to process everything. Thank you all for your help. You've been the best. If anything changes from here, I may update the thread.